Hey, all, I'm Enar, and I want to talk to you today about Castle Nathria and the difficulty of the raid. So, Castle Nathria has been out for about a week and a half. We've gotten through Heroic Week, Mythic Week is now started, and so the race is on. And I wanted to talk about the majority of the player base and how they're probably doing and stuff like that. Now, the Mythic Guilds, especially like the World First guilds and Hall of Fame guilds, they even had a little bit more trouble than usual. Normally, they can easily clear Heroic within a day and do their splits for farming gear and preparing for Mythic Week. With Nathria, that wasn't as much the case. With Nathria, the Sire stood 2 full days, and generally in Heroic, that does not happen for the top end guilds. Generally, it's down within a few hours, and they're farming for Mythic Week. And Mythic Week, yeah, it'll take a bit, but Heroic Week never does. This time it's Hook. Like, some people are actually starting to pay attention to who was gonna down Heroic first. I mean, personally, I think that's a little silly, but to like track that part because it doesn't really matter because a lot of times guilds will like, all right, it's like they'll figure out they can do it and then they just don't because they can be farming gear and stuff like that. But for the majority of the player base, they have found that excuse me, Castle Nathria isn't that easy as it used to be. And I'm talking about like the AOTC guilds, the ones that have to progress through normal and then progress through heroic because they're either not as good, which I mean, I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's just the case. They're just not as good as Mythic Guilds and stuff like that, and that's fine. It just depends on where you want to be. And then you have the people who like they probably could be as good if they put in the time and effort to do so, but they just want to do AOTC and fuck off, which is fine. And I want to talk about the 3 different modes, see where they are, and see if if I think Blizzard intended this. Now, normal mode, while it is still pretty easy, it is definitely had a step up than previous normal mode first tiers. Bosses in general are harder to kill than they usually are. Of course, you have some like super easy bosses like Shriek and Huntsman and things like that. And Sun King and normal is pretty easy if it could take a while depending on your guild and makeup. You also have bosses like Dark Vein, Council of Blood, Sludgefist, some sort of Xy'mox. It depends really, and they're becoming actual walls for these AOTC style guilds. Personally, my guild, we have a lot of trials and stuff like that, and we haven't done any pruning, and we hit the Sludgefist wall on the first week. Of course, that's after like we wiped the Huntsman bug a lot. He was doing triple damage with Sin Seeker and stuff like that, and then we went into normal and did a 6 out of 10 the next 2 days. Normally we don't raid 3 days a week, but we just did that time. The normal mode was like an optional thing, and so it's definitely more difficult than usual, but I wouldn't say extremely so. You probably like you could probably pug the full thing now. With now that people have gotten some more gear and stuff like that, it's definitely possible. Because I mean I pugged normal Sire pretty easily on Sunday. I want to say I can't remember exactly when it was, but so heroic. As of Monday night, which is when I actually did the research for the video and stuff like that, only 155 guilds had cleared heroic. It's past reset day, and so more have definitely cleared it. But like before reset, only 155 guilds had actually cleared heroic, which is less than half of what had cleared Uldir heroic in the same time frame. So it's definitely more difficult. Like in you objectively speaking, it's more difficult. Like less than half of the guilds had cleared it, so it's obviously more difficult than it used to be. So let's talk about Mythic really quick. So far, Mythic hasn't seen a ton more difficulty than previous tiers. The World First race has started, and within 2 days, we're at 7 of 10, which is about standard, give or take, depending. Obviously, you have outliers like Emerald Nightmare and stuff like that. However, now we're at the Sludgefist wall, and Sludgefist was already a decent wall for even these guilds that are doing the race in Heroic. Not like a true wall, but more of one than we've seen in the past. Now, for Mythic, it could require a reset in order to get the item level and the gear to down him. Will it actually play out that way? No one really knows, but I personally think it could. But I'm not entirely sure. So now that we've talked about the three difficulties, let's talk about why Heroic especially seems so hard and whether or not I think it's intended. As for why Heroic seems so much harder, normally we'll have Normal, which is easily puggable week 1, and Heroic, which is also generally puggable week 1, but with a small difficulty spike, but not much. At least until the last 2 or so bosses, where like the spike goes up to around like a Mythic boss, but like not one of the harder Mythic bosses, like one of the easier ones, you know what I mean? This time that's not really the case. We now have Normal, which is, kind of hard, like definitely harder than it used to be, but still doable. I pugged Sire first week, and it was pretty much no problem. We had a couple wipes, but it wasn't that bad. But Heroic, even without the bug on Ultimore, my guild couldn't get super far. So far this week, we're 3 out of 10. We have Raid tomorrow, but better guilds obviously have done more. But in previous first tiers, the guild of my caliber that I'm in right now could probably be 5 or 6 out of 10. But why is it harder is like the real question. And simply said, it's usually one of two things. I'm sure you could agree. It's either tuning or mechanics. I mean, it could, I guess there is a third that the player base got worse for some reason, but generally that's not the case. The WoW player base has probably definitely gotten better because there's a lot more tools for you to get better. And so a lot of you will probably be like, oh, well, it's overtuned, right? It's definitely overtuned. And some bosses are definitely overtuned in Normal and Heroic, like Sludgefist was. We've seen several nerfs on Sludgefist. But I don't personally think it's a tuning thing. Like I said, some bosses are overtuned, but mostly I believe it's mechanics. And I'm not calling everyone bad. I'm just saying a lot of these fights are more mechanically difficult than previous first tier bosses. I mean, look at BFA. Really the only bosses that I can think of that were really kind of difficult mechanically in Normal and Heroic were maybe Mother and Gahoon. And maybe Zool. Zool was a little weird. But, I mean, in Legion, Cenarius was probably the only mechanically hard boss that I can really think of. I honestly don't remember Legion Animal Nightmare too much. And in WoD, I would say, like, Tectis, maybe. I mean, I can't think of... I think the last boss in Xy'mox was kind of difficult, too, for some people. I can't remember, though. But this raid in Nathria, you've got stuff like Xy'mox with quite a few mechanics you have to really watch out for. You have Dark Vein, which is a hectic fight. Sludge, where if, like, just a few people die to chains, you're done. I'm not saying the chains are really hard if you pay attention, but, they can be difficult if you mess up. And it's pretty easy to mess up. And you have the Council, which is, I don't personally think is hard, but it does have some stuff like the dance mechanic, not the dance mechanic, but the one, the Mekarob one, where it, like, spawns, like, pools on the ground. If you're not paying attention, that'll, like, destroy you. And so I think mechanics-wise, there's definitely a lot more difficulty in Heroic Nathria than there has been in the past. Like I said, normally Heroic is just a small increase. Maybe you throw 1 or 2 extra mechanics in there and until the last bosses, and it's pretty easy. So, do I think Blizzard intended this? Given how many smaller tweaks have been happening, so, like, usually we definitely do get tweaks during Heroic Week, but there's been a lot of, like, small tweaks. They're not, like, these big overarching, we're just gonna slap this boss down because it's way harder than we intended. Like, I think Sludgefist probably has had the most tweaks. I don't think that it was... I think that, yes, it probably was somewhat intended. And I think Blizzard is likely testing the waters to see if the community likes extra challenge or if they hate it. Personally, I love it, but I also used to Mythic Raid pretty regularly, and I want to get back up to that point. I took a long break in BFA, and so I have like no logs or anything to do Mythic or whatever. And I like my guild currently for the most part, so we'll see if we get to that point. But I'm not the target audience for this. I think the target audience would have to be the AOTC guilds I mentioned earlier. Maybe the ones who who love the progression aspect of ahead of the curve, and they're not like massively like amazing players. And I'm not saying they're bad players, but you know what I mean. And some of them are, and some of those AOTC guilds are who want to do AOTC and never touch Mythic, and that's fine. So what I think is going on is Blizzard wants to make it a little tougher so they have that progression for longer and they get more satisfied, because honestly I believe it is more satisfying now when you down a boss. I can't really speak for people who are just AOTC raiders, but you know, that's how I feel. So how difficult is Nathria? It's pretty hard, like in comparison at least. I personally love it, and it's a fun raid for me, except Sun King. That's just because I hate healing fights, but that's just personal preference. You know, anyway, how are you guys feeling about it? Let me know down below, and while you're there, you can like or subscribe and follow me and all that. All right, peace out. Have a good one, guys.